Hey there, this is Glenn Dresser with Wheelhouse Games, and this is going to be a demo of the Transcontinental on the Tabletop Simulator mod. This is similar to the demo I've been giving at AwSHUX all weekend, but I wanted to have a version that anyone who missed me at the event can just watch on my stream here. This is the Transcontinental. It is a worker placement, pick up and deliver game for 1 to 4 players about the development of the Canadian Transcontinental Railway. So in this game, we're going to be shipping goods back and forth down this railway here, which is the central board in the game, attempting to complete developments along the side of the tracks, extending the railway down the board, and in general trying to get victory points as a result. There's 4 ways of scoring victory points in the game. Anywhere you see a little maple leaf there is a victory point. So the first way you're going to be scoring victory points is, I just got to pause and sorry about that. The first way you're going to be scoring victory points is by completing these developments here. So every development that gets completed, developments are completed eventually by resources belonging to the different players being filling up these developments. When a development is filled up like that, that's going to result in victory points for the players who contributed. The player who contributed the most is going to get the victory points shown on the front of the card, and the player who contributed, any other player who contributed resources is going to get 2 victory points, and that's universal for all of the tiles. Get the victory points shown on the front if you contribute the most, get 2 victory points if you contribute any other amount. The second way you score victory points in the game is in this section of the board here, called the railhead. So each round there's going to be a railhead phase where this marker here is going to pass a certain number of these tiles. When it does, it's going to pass these tiles as players bid resources, and after the tiles have been passed, players claim resources claim these tiles in order of who contributed the most resources. In this case, whoever the player was who contributed the most resources is probably going to claim that tile for 5 victory points. The third way that you can score victory points has to do with this mechanism up here, which is our little pick up and deliver system. It is a train that is traveling back and forth that we are using to share our goods to ship our goods up and down the line. So for example, if yellow were to load a few navies or navigational engineers, they would go like that. Similarly, blue can load some wood like that. Now occasionally you get situations, let's say red is loading a couple more wood. There's no room for this, for any more wood on the train, but this other flat car here can flip and become storage for wood. So then red could load more wood there. But then there's no more room for steel because that flat car got flipped. So if somebody tried to load steel, what is going to happen is that steel is going to go up into this area here called the yard. So there's an action whereby players can use coal to add resources, to add train cars from the yard back down here onto the line. And they're going to get victory points for doing so. Specifically, you're going to get 2 victory points for taking that action, plus 1 victory point for every resource that gets added in that way. And one fourth and final way you can score victory points is using these these investment cards, which are endgame scoring conditions. So for example, if you started the game with This investment card, you are trying to get 3 of those feather buildings by the end of the game. So you might want to complete this development here, which is going to give you one of those symbols. That development, in this case, is going to give you tourists, which you might want to ship down here to this national park, which also has that symbol, which would give you a second feather symbol, and you might want to ship those tourists a second time and get another symbol, and that's how you would complete this, this investment. But as you noticed when I was just explaining that there, these are 2 buildings that also kind of work together. And that is the other role that these investments have, is they point you towards little chunks of the economy in the game, little strategies that you can follow. For example, if you had that this horse symbol here, you might develop this city. And once it's developed, you might, if you were blue, let's say, then you now might want to also get a farm later in the game, which also has that symbol on it. Let me flip that. And now you can start shipping grain back from this farm back to that city, because that's something that the city wants, to score more victory points and even place another building there. So that's how you can start to satisfy that investment. All right, so the action shipping game. The game is played over a variable number of rounds, and each round consists of a telegram phase where you're going to be placing your telegrams, which are sort of our worker placement mechanism in the game. Then it's going to have an action phase. And the action phase is the primary, is where most of the, well, appropriately enough, most of the action in the game takes place. So I'm just simulating a little telegram phase here, seeing what might make sense for these players. Now you do have 3 telegrams each that you can place during this phase, but you might not want to place all of them. The reason that you might not is because we're going to get another telegram phase when the train comes down to the line and is going to then turn around and go back. So as the board is looking pretty congested right now, players might say that they want to hang on to those telegrams to use after the board clears up a little bit. So let's go ahead to the action phase now. This first area of the board here is a port supply area, and this is where you're going to be, especially early in the game, accumulating a lot of your resources. This is a simple market where if you do not use the space, if nobody uses it, it goes up by 1 to a maximum of 3. And if you do use it, it is going to drop down to 0. So let's say Red Loaded is using this. They're going to be able to load 2 navvies. One of those is going to be stuck going into the yard because there's no more room. They're going to remove their telegram, and as you see, that drops down to 1. Similarly here, yellow would load a couple steel. And green in this case is loading, or sorry, blue is loading a couple of bit. So this is early on in the game how we're going to be generating a lot of our resources. But it's not the only way of generating resources. I want to look ahead at so most of the action is going to happen out here in this part of the board. And you see that all of these telegram spaces have tiles on both sides of the board. Whenever you use one of the telegrams out here, you're going to take an action on each side. So this yellow one here can take an action on this side, which is actually the first player action, plus an action on this side. this blue telegram would be able to take an action on this side and an action on this side. So you're trying to combo your actions together in interesting ways. And I'm actually going to jump ahead here to this tile down here, because I want to talk about this action next, this red cash register here, which is the acquire action. It's very simple. It allows you to acquire one of any type of resource. The third and final way of acquiring resources, let's say red had placed their telegram here instead. On the back of each tile, on most of the tiles, there is a produce action there. In this case, red and yellow both have a building there. They're going to be able to use that produce action. Blue is not going to be able to use that action because it is reserved for players who have a building there. So those are the three ways that you can get resources onto the train, using the port, using the acquire one action, or using a produce action once you have already developed a development. But how do you develop developments? You need to unload your resources. For example, let's say yellow wants to take this develop action, that's that timber frame there, and work on this lumber mill. Well, yellow's got 2 steel. The way that developing works is you're going to choose one of your own resources on the train that matches that symbol. So this is a steel resource, so this is going to work for us. And then every resource of the same type behind it on the line can be unloaded at its owner's choice. So that's a very simple decision for yellow. The only cube behind it is yellow, it can unload that. But sometimes these decisions are a little bit more complex than that. For example, here, blue might be looking at this industrial city here, and on the right side of it, there is a slot there that will take wild resources, so any type. So blue might want to do that. They could start with this cube here, but now every resource, every other wood, because they chose to start with their first wood, every other wood can be unloaded at its owner's choice. So blue might unload 2 wood, and red might decide that they also want to unload 2 wood. And as you can see here, you can actually overfill these slots. So it might be useful here for blue to instead start like this, and then no other player has that option of getting in on it as well. One other caveat to the develop action is you can only use resources that are here on the train, or sorry, on the line. You cannot use resources that are up there in the yard. But there is another action that allows you to get around that a little bit. And that is the portage action, this little canoe there. The portage action allows you to unload one of your own resources absolutely anywhere, as long as it matches the symbol. So, and that resource that you use can be either on the line or in the yard. So red could use this portage action, grab this navvy and drop it there, or even send it somewhere all the way down here in case they want to get started on something before the train reaches it. So those are the 2 ways that you can unload resources from the train to developments. There's one more action that allows you to kind of fiddle with the resources on the train here, and it is this trade action. Very simply, it allows you to remove 2 of your resources from the train of one type and then add 2 resources of another type. So blue could choose to simply turn those 2 steel there into 2 coal. There's a couple other actions I want to just touch on briefly. The first player action allows you to jump to first in the player order. The bonus action, or sorry, the bonus telegram action, which is this orange telegram there, allows you to place a bonus telegram. So each player has one bonus telegram that they cannot place during that telegram placement phase. You can only use it as a result of placing, of taking that action. Red could place it ahead of the track here, or sorry, ahead of the train here, in which case that telegram is going to happen next. But red could also choose to place it somewhere back here, in which case that telegram is going to get activated after the train reaches the railhead, turns around, and heads back. Another action is this, this point blanket here, which is the ally action in the game. Ally actions are each a unique one-time use card that players can use on their action turns. Each player is going to start with an action and can acquire more throughout the game. Yeah, as I mentioned, one-time use, unique ability. You can also count one of your ally cards, pardon me, towards each investment card you have. As you notice, it has those little investment building symbols on it as well. The final action to talk about is this coal shovel here, which is the resupply action. And crucially, you also notice it is here at the very end of the east end of the track. That means that action is going to happen automatically every time the train gets back to the east end without a player needing to do anything to activate it. The first thing you do when the resupply action occurs is you check the coal tender here. If it is not full, if there are not 3 resources in these first 3 coal slots, nothing happens. But if they are full, as it is here, then the resupply action must occur, and the player who has the most coal in the coal tender, which right now is blue, is going to remove all their coal that's on the line and choose one type of cargo to add from the line, from the yard to the line. And as I kind of outlined off the beginning when I was talking about ways of scoring points, that player is going to score 2 victory points for taking that action, plus 1 point for every resource added in that way. And using the handy scripting here, so you see that blue got those points. Blue also got to place a building here, which is towards potentially towards an endgame achievement, and that tile got added to the train. So those are all the actions that you can take during your action turn. And that leaves us with only one more part of the game to talk about, which is the railhead phase. The railhead phase occurs each round when the train gets down here to the the west end of the completed track. At this point, players are going to bid resources that they have on the train towards the railhead. You can only bid navvies, steel, and wood, and you can only bid resources that are here on the line. The resources that players bid are going to be in the physical game. Players are going to do this behind a player screen, and in on the tabletop simulator mod, each player has these little tiles that they can use to set their bid. So the total number of resources that are bid, players are going to reveal those amounts, and those are going to be combined into a pool that is going to be compared to the cost up here to clear each section of wilderness. So for example, if players combined only bid 3 resources, the railhead's only going to advance that far. If players collectively bid 5 resources, it would advance this far, and then 6, and then 10, and so on. looking at those numbers there. Each round, one resource is going to be doubled in value, as indicated by this marker there. So right now, navies are doubled. So yellow here, because they have 3 navies, they could actually bid 6. And similarly, red could bid 4. And let's just go and put in some bids and see what happens for these players. All right, so in this case, the players put in their bids, and the railway, 8 resources were bid in total, and the railway advanced past these first 3 spaces. Now, this is going to allow the players who contributed resources to claim these tiles in order of who contributed most, with ties broken by player turn order. So in this instance, yellow bid the most, and then red, and then blue. So I have to change my color here to claim that, but yellow would likely claim this one. But just before I claim that, I also want to point out there's this symbol here, which is a general bonus, meaning all players are going to get that benefit, and this is an ally card. So when I score this tile, all players got a second ally card. And then I think red was next, so I'm going to claim for red. Red is last in the player turn order right now, and of these 2 tiles, this one gives 2 points and allows the player who claims it to jump to first in the turn order. And lastly, blue, in our hypothetical scenario here, is going to claim this one. And there was a bonus on that last tile there that blue claimed that would allow it to place its bonus telegram. One important caveat about the railhead phase is when you score a tile, you remove all of the resources you bid from the train. So if you bid like 5 resources and you're stuck claiming a tile that only cost 2 resources, doesn't matter. You're still removing all 5 resources from the train. However, if you do not claim a tile as a result of the railhead phase, let's say that all 3 players bid, but the railhead only advanced 2 spaces, you do not lose the resources that you bid. So there's much more of a risk in overbidding rather than underbidding. At the end of the railhead phase, players are going to place telegrams they did not place on the way there. The train is going to head back down the line, activating each of these telegrams as it gets there. And one last thing to mention about the railhead phase is what happens if the railhead only moves 1 space or 0 spaces. In those instances, this marker here, the last spike, is going to start to move this way towards the railhead. And that is our end game trigger. When the railhead reaches the last spike, that is going to trigger the next round to be the final round. So if players are focusing on building developments and not paying any attention to the railhead, then the game end is sort of going to creep closer from the other direction. And in that last round, we can imagine in this scenario that all these tiles have been cleared from the board and the train has made it all the way down here. The last round is actually only a half round, with the game ending when the train gets down here to this final railhead phase that has these very high victory point tiles out. So players are going to complete that last railhead phase, reveal their investments that they've been working to complete throughout the game, score them, and then of course compare and see who is the victor, who is the contractor who is most successful in sort of completing their vision for the railway. So yeah, that is the Transcontinental. Plays from 2 to 4 players. There's a couple differences that I didn't get into for the 2-player versus the 3 to 4 player game. Solo player mode is quite different and isn't playable on Tabletop Simulator at the moment, though we might have that playable by the time we go to Kickstarter. Speaking of Kickstarter, this does come to Kickstarter November 10th. So from the time I am recording this video on October, what is it today? About the 18th. We are about 3 weeks away from Kickstarter, which is really exciting, and I hope that you follow along and help us on the next phase of this journey towards making this game a reality. Thanks a lot for watching. If you want to follow along, best way to do that is go to wheelhousegames.com and sign up there for the newsletter, and you'll get updates every week about new character reveals, where we're at in this journey of bringing it to Kickstarter, and some other special announcements. Thanks a lot for watching.